Yes, so I think that we can start the conference of today, and I would like to wish everyone a good afternoon, and I would like to welcome all of you at the conference, both the people that is in presence here with us at Casa Italia and people that is online. Let me firstly to introduce myself. I'm rather new to Hanoi. I'm Marco Abbiati, and I'm the science attaché at the Italian embassy here in Hanoi. I arrived just a few months ago and start being active in the field of science and technologies and culture. A special thanks I would like to dedicate to the Vietnamese authorities, to international organizations, to the European companies, which had to get up early today to participate in this conference, and to the museums of Hanoi that are participating and contributing to the workshop. I'm delighted to have the privilege to chair this conference on museum best practices in the digital era. As you know, since the beginning of September, despite the difficulties created by the COVID pandemic, the Hanoi Museum is hosting Magister Raffaello exhibition. Raffaello's masterpieces are fragile and they are not easy to move from their permanent exhibitions. However, we feel the need to share with a wider audience the beauty, the culture, and the emotion that art can give to all of us. And to overcome the problems of moving art pieces, masterpieces, and to give the opportunity to guide the visitors in a historical pathway, a virtual pathway through the Italy of the 16th century, the exhibition was set up using the cutting-edge digital technologies. As I said, the exhibition is on since early September, and several collateral events have been organized during the exhibition, during the opening period of the exhibition, and today's conference can be seen as a final act of this exhibition, since the exhibition is going to close on the 35th of October, in a couple of days. And for this exhibition, the state-of-the-art technologies have been used in setting up the show, and the use of the digital technologies suggested as the theme of this conference. So with this conference, we would like to look in the future of exhibitions and of museum activities. The role of museums in the 21st century has been questioned, and apart from their essential function in preserving and restoring cultural and natural heritage, the common feeling is that it is necessary to update the approach of museums and exhibition to attract people, in particular the new generations, to explore our past and our present, arts and nature. The pandemic has even accelerated the process by preventing visitors from visiting museums for a long period. During the lockdown, most of museums have been shut down. And even the oldest museum, I can mention the Uffizi in Florence, began to approach the digital technologies and the social media during the closure to maintain the contact and the link with the possible visitors. And today we are here, and experts from Europe and Vietnam will share their experiences and technologies to look forward to a possible collaboration in promoting dissemination and disseminating cultural messages. The speakers of today are Jelena Ivanovic from Italy, Andreas Bauer from Austria, Marcella Beccaria from Italy, Tran Hong Han from Hanoi, and Dang Min Ve from Hanoi Museum. And Michael Crawford, representative of UNESCO to Vietnam. And I would like now to invite the ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Antonio Alessandro, to give the welcome speech.
Mr. Nin, the representative from the Ministry of Culture, Sport and Tourism, speakers, Mr. Croft from UNESCO, the director of UNESCO in Vietnam, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon at Casa Italia. and good morning to our friends connecting from Italy and Europe. I'm delighted to welcome you all to this international conference titled Museum Best Practices in the Digital Era, organized by the Italian Embassy in Vietnam with the Italian media company Magister Art. This is the second conference related to the current display at the Hanoi Museum until the 31st of October of Magister Raffaello, a spectacular digital exhibition promoted by the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation to celebrate one of the greatest masters of the Italian Renaissance on the occasion of the 500 years of anniversary of his death. The first conference was last Saturday, and it was about Renaissance seen through today's eyes. And it was directed to artists and experts of art with the objective of debating the influence of the Italian Renaissance on contemporary creativity. This conference today is directed to managers of cultural events and exhibitions and aims at discussing how cultural institutions, such as museums in particular, can adapt themselves to the changing tastes and habits of the public in the digital era. And I would also add in the COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 era. Our discussion will move from the experience of Magister Raffaello. We are very proud to have brought this exhibition to Vietnam in spite of the very difficult circumstances caused by the world pandemic. And I wish to express once more my deepest appreciation to the Hanoi People's Committee, to the Museum of Hanoi, and to the Ministry of Culture, Sport and Tourism for having supported our exhibition. Hanoi is the first city in the world to host this unique exhibition, which has been safely enjoyed by thousands of Vietnamese visitors so far. Now, what lessons can we take from Magister Raffaello? Does it represent a best practice? I think this is the question. We will hear more about that from our speakers. But let me say that, in my view, this exhibition could be a model for the creative industry, especially for countries with a rich cultural heritage, such as Italy and Vietnam, because it combines the beauty of the past with the state-of-the-art technology, and thus allows to present both images, that of a rich cultural heritage and that of the high technological know-how. Magister Raffaello goes much beyond the expected presentation of artworks. With a mix of images, sounds, and information, it offers an immersive, emotional experience, accompanying the visitor in a journey through the history, the places, and the culture of Italian Renaissance. And Magister Raffaello is also a sustainable exhibition because its packing and shipping is conceived to optimize time, volume, weight, and costs. And this is an increasingly important and relevant issue for creative institutions and endeavors. Our conference today will focus on museums in particular. We know that in the last years, museums all over the world have been searching for new ways to engage with the public. Digital technologies play a crucial role in this respect. The impact of the global pandemic has now accelerated this process. The people mobility has dramatically reduced, and the possibilities for gathering a large number is extremely difficult in other countries. We are lucky in Vietnam to be on a very safe situation. And we thank the authorities for having been able to allow for this. As in the Raffaello case, however, digital exhibitions should not simply reproduce artworks, but should offer an innovative experience which can stimulate the visitor's imagination and emotions. Museums are also amazing locations for cultural and creative events beyond traditional exhibitions. The Italian Embassy in Hanoi is proud to have a fruitful partnership with the Museum of Hanoi, one of the best iconic locations in the capital, and which deserves a key place in the city's cultural scenario. And we are also very happy to have excellent relations with the Vietnam Museum of Ethnology. International experts are currently debating on how museums must rethink their strategies to attract the public and in particular the young generations. In today's conference, we will hear the opinion of international and Vietnamese experts on that. And finally, the representative of UNESCO in Vietnam, Mr. Michael Croft, will possibly link our discussion to the debate currently ongoing in Hanoi on how to raise the creative profile of the city following its recognition as UNESCO Creative City in the design category. We congratulate the authorities of Hanoi for this outstanding achievement and recognition of the city's unique cultural legacy and of the great vitality of its citizens. And we hope that Magister Raffaello will contribute to the city's drive towards innovation and creativity. As I'm convinced that hosting international cultural events should be part of the strategy to make Hanoi a smart and creative city. So I conclude my introductory remarks by inviting all of you, those who have not yet visited Magister Raffaello, to take advantage of the last few days before it closed down on the 31st of October. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your introduction. And now we enter in the presentations, technical presentations of the conference. And the first presentation will be given by Jelena Ivanovic. Jelena Ivanovic, she is from Magister Art, and Magister Art is a company that has been planning and creating the exhibition that is now going on at the Hanoi Museum, Magister Raffaello. Jelena Ivanovic holds a PhD in medieval art history, and she has a broad experience in collaboration with research institutions in Europe and over Europe. And she has an extensive experience in management of cultural heritage sectors and museums based on digital media. And I give you the floor. Jelena, please.
Thank you, Professor Abbiati, and my greetings to His Excellency, Mr. Ambassador, to the Museum of Hanoi, and to all the present institutions and authorities, to the public present on site and online. So we are talking about digital media and digital transformation, and when talking about the impact of the digital transformation in the cultural sector and in the sector of cultural and creative industries, what we see is that many organizations seek to redefine how they create, how they deliver, and how they capture value. Technology is definitely a part of digital transformation, but digital transformation calls for more than just updating technology or redesigning products. It is actually a lot about the processes that can cut the gap in distances nowadays, especially that those distances are not only physical but also psychological. Magister Art works in close contact with museums, and in the past years we have seen that many cultural institutions, both public and private, tend to refresh their core values and to adapt to new processes that are, for example, cross-functional collaboration, continual learning, performance metrics, incentive structures that are aligned with digital cultural goals, as well as accountability, transparency, and willingness to experiment. We can move to the next slide. From our point of view, we have accepted this challenge. And being a digital native company, the digital transformation is something that we have embraced since the very beginning. We operate in a strict value bond with the cultural heritage sector, according to the keywords such as promotion, accessibility in terms of a total access to the knowledge, and sustainability. We take on the role of partner of the museums institutions that we have been supporting since 2012, not only in the direction of a broader digital literacy, but also as a business integrator with customized and tailor-made operational and financial solutions. So our business model is B2B and B2C, and internally we own all the digital production and content integration processes that are entirely carried out in-house. And we have a specific operational, distributional, and editorial model. And all of this is reflected in our structure and the way we do it. So we can move to the next slide. Our company is structured in three clusters that are focused on activities and processes that offer a unique and integrated products. These products are heterogeneous products and they belong to different sectors of the cultural ecosystem. But they have a high level of interaction and integration between each other, or rather, they're conceived to be inseparable. So we have Magister Factory, that is an experimental innovation hub for the creation of custom products and contents, such as special and site-specific projects, art installations, live events, concerts, publications, educational and training courses. So this is where we research also theoretically from the point of view of museology and museography, the material culture, and also where we conceive, where we develop and produce our products. Then we have Magister Media, which is a production house of audiovisual, digital, and multimedia contents, such as films, documentaries, docufiction, educational films, miniseries for the web, aimed at communicating, promoting, and enhancing, first of all, the Italian cultural heritage, but also a general cultural heritage and its territory. And then we have Magister Artbox, that produces exhibitions and installations with exhibition design and scenic systems without any waste of elements, and that can be entirely managed and implemented remotely. These are sustainable, modular, and flexible exhibition kits that respect environmental sustainability and the nature also of the location in which they are placed. And they're especially designed for traveling projects. So we can say that what we do is integrated communication. And what we aim to is digital social innovation. So we believe that to innovate socially through art and culture means not only audience development, but also an active participation of broad range of citizens in the production, in the use and fruition of the culture. So through the years, we have understood how important it is to implement strategies of participation, of cooperation, and inclusion. So the solutions that we provide have been conceived according to a bottom-up and people-first approach. And we translate it into environments that are created around the needs of the visitors to stimulate and to amplify the perception of the exhibition context and allowing the exhibition to reach the visitors and not only vice versa. So how do we do it? We can move to the next slide. What is innovation for Magister Art? The innovation of Magister Art is first of all an innovation of method intended as an overall company's know-how. We develop projects according to an integrated approach of experimental research and development applied to digital innovation of culture. So the Magister method is identified within the definition of experimental development as it is described in the so-called Frascati manual. For us, technology is not an end, but it is a means. We use technology as an adaptable and a versatile tool that can change. it can change with the aim of a specific narrative that we try to convey, and that must be as authentic as possible. Our exhibitions, therefore, are not created to replace the direct and physical enjoyment of an original work of art in its original context, but to complement it. So to reconstruct also what is a total context that is historical, cultural, and social. So the final result of our method is translated on several layers and levels, and as it is evidenced in the Magister Raffaello exhibition, exactly that you can see at the Museum of Hanoi for only a few other days, as well as in other several case stories of our past projects, such as Magister Giotto and Magister Canova. So we can move to the next slide. As you will also be able to see in video at the end of the presentation that presents a specific showcase around the Magister Canova exhibition, what we deliver is, first of all, the exhibition design through the creation of physical platforms, of stage machines and soundscapes that are integrated in immersive spaces or in environments that are created to amplify the perception of the visitors. So we have study islands, installation and works of art in dialogue with technology, 360 projections, multimedia display cases, textile architectural and anatomic tables, all of this in order to recreate the great master's creative process. So as you can see here, we have set up an evolution of our exhibition setup collection, starting with a custom setup made for the Magister Giotto exhibition, as you can see here. And then we can move to the next slide. Moving to the semi-custom design that we have implemented in Magister Canova exhibition. And then moving on in the evolution to a modular exhibition setting, as we can see in the next slide, which is Magister Art Box, that is produced specifically. If we move to the next one slide, moved exactly specifically for the Magister Raffaello exhibition, and is conceived as the best suitable for traveling exhibitions and support a fully remote setup with no people traveling and that respect environmental sustainability. So we can see on the next slide as well how our modularity of the setup looks actually like. Then what we do is obviously the content creation. We can move to the next slide. The content that we create is always in collaboration with scientific committee of experts and curators of international importance. So with the utmost scientific and academic accuracy. This is very important for our type of research that we do. So the contents are processed through different media and the creative and transdisciplinary contamination of different languages, visual, sound, narrative, scenic. And this process implies a fluid creative approach and sees the involvement of many different professionals. For example, art historians, musicians, writers, actors, directors, set designers, architects. Here we have an example where we show an unprecedented use of what is the sculpture of Canova, Hercules in Lica, that is exhibited in Rome at the National Gallery of Modern Art, and that we shot with a motorized camera, Jimmy Jib, equipped with a 9-meter extension arm. By rotating the machine around the work and the movement from bottom to the top, we were able to return a new and never realized vision of the sculptured visual expression of the work of art that was otherwise impossible to see during a museum visit because it was placed too high. So this way we created an alternative cognitive experience. As we can see also in the next slide, we moved also around the Paolina Borghese sculpture in order to reproduce this alternative knowledge. And in the next slide as well, what was our narration in the visual aspect of the Magister Raffaello exhibition. So all of this is always accompanied by a soundscape that is created with the music especially composed for every exhibition. Obviously, besides the contents, we can move to the next slide as well. We are also focused on the custom projects. So the connections and exchanges between the art of the past and the creativity of today that we have always underlined that very important is one of the keys to narrating a universal cultural heritage that is a heritage of all mankind. For example, for every exhibition, we commission a contemporary work of art. So, as it is the Karnowski installation at the Magister Raffaello at Museum in Hanoi. And in the past years, as we can see in this slide, we have commissioned to a contemporary artist, Fabrizio Plessi, a work of art that is conceived as an integral part of the set design of the Magister Canova exhibition, which was called The Journey into the Mind of Canova, that was fully usable. It was a sculpture, a space with the appearance of the head of the artist in which you can enter and to retrace his liquid thought and the neuroscientific phase of his creative process. So on the next slide, if we move on, we can also see our need to open dialogues on new themes of experimental research. And it has led us to confront ourselves with the theme of replicability of an original work of art. So by combining art with technology, it was a challenge that we faced. And we did it by putting the chisel of the sculpture in the hands of the computer robot that, upon a Canova original drawing, processed and carved 10 tons of Carrara marble in something like 270 hours. And it delivered an exact replica of the Canova sculpture, Cupid and Psyche, as you will see also in a short video after the presentation that is exposed in the Louvre. We can move to the next slide as well. We have also elaborated a different version of Magister Raffaello exhibition in a site-specific project that was designed for the Ars Electronica Center in Linz without the exhibition design, but to be projected in 8K inside a museum deep space in order to offer an alternative, a site-specific and very immersive vision of the Raffaello works. So in this way, we are assisted by the tools of technological innovation. But why do we do it? We do it to create those unprecedented visions of art and to offer to visitors a different and amplified point of view. And all of this, we call it augmented narration. So to sum up in the last slide that we can see, what is and how is an overall contribution of Magister Art when the company moves around the museum. It moves with a dynamic productions that includes a wide range of products, not only exhibitions, that is the core of our work, but also e-contents, replicas, reproductions, publications, apps, merchandising, concerts, events, etc. So I would like to shortly make you see two short videos, and I'm very happy to open up also different themes for conversation that I didn't touch right now, but I hope that we will have to change the chance to face it in our discussion after. So we can start with the first video. It is a video, yeah. This is just a small taste of what we were talking about on this thinking and our approach to the theme of originality of the work of art. and then we will see another short video just to sum up how do we move inside an exhibition space with installations and this augmented narration that we were talking about. So please, we can start with the next video. This was a short taste of what our backstage looks like. That allows you to enter in our setup and augmented narration processes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Elena, for your very interesting presentation, and those of us who has had the chance to visit the Magister Raffaello could really appreciate the outcome of all the work that you are doing. And now we move on with the next speaker, Andreas Bauer from Ars Electronica, which is based in Linz, in Austria. And Andreas Bauer is responsible for the organization of activities of Ars Electronica, and Ars Electronica collaborate with Magister Raffaello in the creation of, with Magister Art, sorry, with the creation of Magister Raffaello exhibition. I give you the floor, Andreas, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, and it's a great honor and pleasure to be part of this this conference and this talk about the digitalization and the aspects of digitalization that brings to the museum. So thank you very much for the possibility to be in rainy Linz and in sunny Hanoi at the same time. I would like to give you in my presentation a little bit of overview of what Ars Electronica is and what we're doing, and then particularly as it is my field of working, what means the role of a museum in the future, and what aspects we can learn from there, and what kind of what we need to do, and what are the purposes of a museum in the future. I think this is something that is a very important part, and it's great to follow Yelena's speech, because a lot of these things that Magister Art brought up is something that we deeply have in our hearts as well, and that's why the collaboration together with Magister Art is really a fantastic piece. And having an exhibition like Magister Raffaello at the same time in Hanoi and here in Linz, even though they have a little bit of different shape, is a wonderful example of how digitalization can help to bring art pieces out into the public. I would like to move on to the next slide, because what we have here is what we show of what we consider as the ecosystem of Ars Electronica. We are, when it comes to digitalization, quite an old institution. We were founded in 1979, so more than 40 years ago, in this rather small 200,000 inhabitants city of Linz, and very industrial city, steel industry, chemical industry, mechanical engineering, and these kind of things are the core focus. This is the very industrial heart of Austria, if you want. So in this area. And Linz was not known as a cultural city at all. But Ars Electronica was one step in developing a city into new fields of creativity, new fields of media, new fields of ecosystem. And Ars Electronica was kind of accompanying and providing and laying out the path, so to speak, for this development, which culminated in different aspects. Linz was Cultural Capital of Europe in 2009. And Linz is UNESCO City of Media Arts since 2014. And I congratulate Hanoi in joining this very elite and fantastic circle of UNESCO cities, which is a fantastic way of collaborating and networking on a global scale. We were founded as a festival for art, technology, and society, and all the different steps, like the Ars Electronica Center, this permanent exhibition here, the Ars Electronica Future Lab as our research and development department on a very university level, but also with applied research done for companies and industry, is a good collaboration of the more, let's say, non-profit oriented part, while then Ars Electronica Solution is definitely focusing towards the market and to a business-to-business collaboration on how these technologies and particularly also using of artistic expressions can help companies to promote their ideas and their knowledges. There are many other aspects, as I said, the pre-Ars Electronica, and one aspect I would like to point out is Ars Electronica Export. The possibility, very much like Magister Art is doing in exporting and showing their art pieces all around the world. We do a kind of similar thing, and we had the pleasure to host a lot of exhibitions also in the Asian area. We've been just until recently in China with 2 exhibitions in Beijing and Shenzhen. Japan obviously is a big market when it comes to media art. Korea, unfortunately, as far as I know, nothing in Vietnam so far, but this is hopefully changing in the future, so we can continue on working on that. So we call it ecosystem because we have the very artistic input from the festival and from the pre-Ars Electronica. We have input from the academic research via the Future Lab. We have the center as a test environment with about usually 180,000 visitors per year to see how the audience is responding to this development, and then kind of exporting it to Ars Electronica Solution in a way where we actually also generate money that kind of goes into the beginning, into the artists, into the festival, and into the center. And in a total globe, on a total scale, this means that we are owned by the city of Linz, so we are owned by the public, but we can fund about 60–65% of the money that we need. We can fund ourselves by this collaboration with industry and companies. And I really mean collaboration, not sponsoring. So I think this is a very important distinguishing here. If we move on to the next slide, I think there are 3 main words on the slide, which means art, technology, and society. And this was the subtitle of the first festival in 1979 and still is the core of Ars Electronica. Whatever we're doing, we're working inside this triangle between art, technology, and society. Coming back to Raphael and the Renaissance, I mean, most of these artists, if you also think of people like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo, today we perceive them as artists, but they were the top scientists of their time. They were exploring new ways of giving us a different view on the world and on the audience as general. And so things change, and that's why also this triangle between art, technology, and society is very important, because in the core, in the center, is always me, human, me as a person, or us as a society, on reflecting how technology changes the way we perceive the world. If we move on, please. We have a new exhibition running now, which is called Compass, Navigating the Future. Uh, and I think this picture reminds me of some classical paintings. And it's done on purpose because Martin, the guy, he's wearing a brain-computer interface cap. And that definitely shows this collaboration between technology and art at the same time. Compass navigating the future means also when we come to talking about what's the aspects of a museum in the future, mean that we are not showing the future. We are not showing our audience, this will be your car in 5-10 years, this will be the next cell phone. No, what we're talking about, what we will try to give is an orientation tool, a compass that we as a society or me as a person can orientate ourselves in this new technology driven future, and that we can decide in which path, which direction we would like to go into that future, so that we don't end up, or our kids don't end up in a future that we actually didn't intend it in the beginning. And when we move on for the next slide, you will see a couple of images that how this exhibition looked like. At the moment, the core topic here is definitely artificial intelligence, because this is what we are seeing one of the core technologies that is influencing us and our society a lot at the current level. And please move on to the next slide. What is very important, or what we deeply believe, and this is again a common collaboration with Magister Art, we deeply believe that you cannot explain technology again by using technology. So lots of people are astonished that we actually don't have an audio guide system, that we don't have fancy iPods or robots running around, but that we have human people. And you see here in the corner, in the center, you see Barbara, one of our intro trainers, a total of about 60 of our staff that we have to really start a negotiation and a discussion with our visitors. In that case, explaining the visitors, this group of visitors, how an artificial intelligence is actually seeing its environment, how a car, an autonomous car, for example, perceives its environment. And it's done here on this very human level. Please move on to the next slide. Not only we're talking about art, but we incorporate also, of course, because that's our heritage, where we come from, art and art pieces. This is a picture of our exhibition called Artificial Intelligence Meets Music. And it goes all the way back to the 9th century in Baghdad and the time there, and how people already started to produce machines that can compose, they can replicate music, and all the way up to what is standing here in front is a machine called Making Techno with Robots. So a German-based artist, Simon Geist, who is using all kinds of electronic devices to replicate the typical techno sound in that case. And please move on to the next slide, because what is important often in museums is that you have this separation between, this is the part where the adults are so to speak, get their input, and then there are the other areas where the kids get their input. And it was mentioned in the beginning that the next generation is very important, that we have to get used, but that museums are important aspect of society and play a very important role in that field. What these little kids are doing here is just the same as we saw with the other group where Barbara was explaining how artificial intelligence sees the world. In that case, they are building little animals out of these Duplo blocks and put them in front of this little desk, and it's rotating, and the computer makes a 3D scan, or the tablet that's actually built in there makes a 3D scan of this object, and an artificial intelligence is then processing it and try to recognize what animal the kid actually built. So it's totally the same approach that the adult, so to speak, experience, but with a very playful environment. And this picture is actually one of the rare pictures where there are no adults on it. Usually you have the parents at least as much inside this environment just as the kids do. So it's again meeting on eye level. And if we please move on, it's an approach that we use here. It's called STEAM. In English, you know, but when you come to education and when you come to the role of a museum in the future, we believe that the role of a museum is has an educational purpose. We are lucky as Ars Electronica. We don't have an heritage in terms of that we have a collection that we have to expose, but we can are very freely here. But still, education is the core competence that we try to give our visitors. That when they leave the building, that they're kind of more educated citizens to move around in their society. And STEAM is a very powerful approach. It combines this educational model of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, with this A for arts. So STEAM, also in English, is a good way of producing this power. Think of a steam engine. And art changes this way, particularly when we talk about new generations. We have people who are interested in technology, but a lot of them are a broad part of the society is not that much into technology, but into creativity, into art, into expressing ourselves. And using STEAM approach really helps. Just two words about the picture that you see. This is actually a workshop that we developed for the European Space Agency. In the background, you see a satellite image of an environment of a city, an infrared image that gives you information about the vegetation of that area. And we use these images that are available on the internet and use an artistic technology called cyanotopy to actually produce these blue images that Armin holds in his hand here, and explains this workshop to a school class that, due to COVID at the moment, cannot participate here live in the museum, but is sitting at home in their classroom. They got delivered the same articles or the same chemicals that they need, and they do the workshop in the school class or in their home, wherever they are at the moment. Now, moving on, please, we come to one of the centerpieces, which was mentioned already by Jelena before, and that's the Deep Space 8K, a room that is behind this gray concrete wall here, featuring a 60 by 9 meter projection wall, as well as a 60 by 9 meter floor with this very high resolution of 8K. And here the possibility of the Ars Electronica Future Lab comes into game, because they were the ones developing that room. So we have more or less total control over what we are doing in this room. And by moving on to the next slide, you will see a short video about the different, and that gives you an overview of the topics that we show in this very special room. So please, if you could take this in. It's difficult, of course, to explain something that you kind of have to be inside, and we experienced the same when we started to work together with Magister Art in the beginning to explain them the idea, but they were really quick on catching up. It's a very playful and enjoyable environment, and you've seen topics that we touch on there is from our cultural heritage all the way to media art, because that's where we come from. It's from getting out into the universe and fly through the universe in 3D. And in the next step, you go into the human body and you see the inside from a new perspective that you haven't seen before. And this is, for example, used by the medical university here in Linz to teach medical students about the human anatomy. So this is not a room that is solely used for museum purposes, but it becomes actually a lecture room. And what is important in this presentation is that they are always interactive. In this image here, you see much more the kids enjoying this room, and you see my colleague Uli there in the back with the orange shirt, and she's actually live presenting whatever the kids are doing here. So this is never something where you're left alone. And obviously, if we move on to the next slide, this was a fantastic, or is a fantastic possibility to show masterpieces like Raphael's work here also in the deep space, because it gives you the possibility to see things from a new perspective, to experience art pieces not the way that you would experience it from if you stand of the original one, original piece, and enjoy the environment, enjoy the scenery, enjoy the people around you. But digitalization opens up new perspectives, and the next picture here also shows, particularly when it comes to the size. If you could please move on to the next slide. The sheer size of such projections have the possibility to give you a much more immersed feeling into this image. Even so, this is also in reality not a small painting, but you see the people standing in front of them of this painting. It means that you can go really, really close to these images, and because of this high resolution, they also stay sharp until the very deep, until you're very close to the wall. And that changes the perspective people experience these art pieces. They give you kind of emotional, a much more emotional approach to these art pieces. So kind of summing up these things for us, Ars Electronica, and I think this is one of the pieces that I would like to bring into discussion, is that this triangle between art, technology, and society is the core focus of when we talk about digitalization and when we talk about users in a museum about digitalization, that we always have to keep this triangle in mind, because in the end it tells us where we as human are centered. Museum of the Future has definitely the role to be a museum for education, to be a piece where people come to start think and reflect from the things of the past, how this will reflect and how this will impact on the future and our society in the future. And the next slide, please, means that we're working, it's here called European Platform for Digital Humanism, but in the end, it's a global approach, because we are humans, and with all this data and from privacy issues to economy issues, we humans have to find a way how we use technology in a more human-centered approach, not so that we don't only have a surveillance part or an economy part and a money-driven or an institutional driven, but a much more human-driven approach to digitalization. And museums definitely have a major role in this discussion. And we're very lucky to be part and kind of fostering this platform so far on a European level, but we're definitely sure that this will also continue on a global level. And the mentioned UNESCO Cities of Creativity are part of this this approach. So thank you very much. Just continue for the last slide to have a last view on the Ars Electronica Center, and hopefully you have soon the possibility to visit us in reality, but at the meantime, we have this wonderful possibility to share each other's idea via the digital forms. Thank you very much.
And the fact that human has to be the driver of the choices is really essential. We often lose the idea of everything is dedicated to the growth of the human society and not only to the economic growth or to the to rise the well-being, the material well-being of the people. Thank you very much. And now we move on. We move over to Marcella Beccaria. Marcella Beccaria is an historian. She's a curator of the Castello di Rivoli Museum in northern Italy, Torino. And she is also the vice president of the Italian Association of Museums of Contemporary Art. And I give you the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor and a privilege to be today with you. I hope the connection is okay. I was very impressed by the presentations that we heard so far. Of course, I'm bringing in, I think, a slightly different point of view because I guess that, as many of you know, I'm speaking from Italy, that in this moment, it's a country that is has been severely hit by the COVID situation. And unfortunately, it seems as if we are facing again new challenges in the near upcoming future. In the past months, Italian museums have definitely worked in order to align themselves to a much more comprehensive digital approach, using technologies in different ways. One of the ways for sure has been a sort of what I would define a soft approach, meaning that digital technologies have been enabled museums to welcome visitors, despite the fact that the physical doors needed to be closed. And this is a very important thing, and I'm just showing you a few images. I guess you can move on to the next slides. Of course, it will not be possible to go through all the Italian museums. The AMACI association that I am vice president of is the Association of Italian Contemporary Art Museums, and it gathers about 25 museums, so quite a large number. And for example, here we're just showing the outside of GAMEC, the museum in Bergamo, the Castello di Rivoli in Turin, and then if we move on to the next slide, for example, the museum in Bologna, in Mambo, and the one in Gallarate in Lombardia. And some of the museums I'm talking about, especially, we can move on to the next slide, for example, the one in Bergamo, are working in regions that have been very severely hit by the COVID situation. And of course, been responding in different ways. And in this case, the digital technologies, of course, have provided a wonderful platform. GAMEC, for example, since last March, has been developing a very innovative program of radio that can be used through streaming or heard as a podcast. And Radio GAMEC has provided an amazing platform in order for the museum to keep on functioning as a center point, as a focus for its own community, especially in a very dramatic moment in which the very word of community was somehow at risk. They've been even actually mentioned by UNESCO as one of the best museum practices in the current dramatic situation. And we can move on to the next slide. And for over 2 months, the museum has actually provided an uninterrupted service to the community. Because of course, when we talk about museums, I would like to stress very much the fact that we are talking about public museums, museums that are not-for-profit organizations, and they act as a service for the community. And the digital technologies, intentionally, in a way, I'm talking about, are actually very low-key digital technologies. They're not technologies that are necessarily looking for the wow effect. More on the opposite. We actually can also move on to the next slide. I'm talking about technologies that are ready and available to the public domain, such as a smartphone. I mean, you can be, therefore, keep on being connected to your own museum, to the museum that is in your own city or maybe elsewhere through your smartphone, wherever you are. The museum in Mambo, for example, in Bologna, has also beautifully responded to the invite that the Minister of Culture, Dario Franceschini, as we know, has proposed to Italian museums in the past months. And for example, working on a daily basis, they have been organizing this program that it's called 2 Minutes at Mambo, offering the audience the possibility to view special contents provided by artists as well by art critics or cultural historians or a number of different collaborators. And we can move on to the next slide. For example, the Castello di Rivoli, also in another different way, you can also move on to the next slide, has organized something that it's like really a new venue, imagined in those days in which the physical venue was not accessible to the public. And we called it Digital Cosmos. And Digital Cosmos really has been functioning as an additional gigantic gallery, museum gallery, as a place for artists to come and offer also new contents and of course provide new artworks for the public to be viewed during the lockdown days. And we can move on to the next slide. And also to the next one, actually. In these days in which we are able to welcome the audiences again, I guess both at Castello di Rivoli and in many other museums in Italy, we have been somehow, we had the privilege, I guess, to further reflect on the differences between actually working only through the digital or working again as a museum that can use better, in a better ways, an integration of digital technologies and working also as a physical venue. I'm just showing here, for example, just as a sample, I would say, an image from an exhibition devoted to the work of Giulio Paolini that is currently on view. And for example, we have been working, you will see big wall text, for example, in the back. And those wall text, we can move on to the next slide, can also be accessed through a QR code at the website of the museum, or they can be downloaded from smartphones and can work as an audio guide while you're walking through the galleries, or also as a written text that you can freely take home with you or read while you're actually riding in the bus back home. In a number of ways, we can move on to the next slide. Some of the, actually the current situation we are experiencing in these days was already, some of the issues were already put on the table in 2017, when as AMACI, we organized a major conference that we titled Museums at the Post-Digital Turn. And for us, the conference actually was a very strong and important platform in order to better understand what does it mean to work with the digital as a tool, or what does it mean to work with the digital as a critical content? Because there's quite a big difference here. And I guess it's really from the lesson and from the reflections that contemporary artists are doing today, that it's good to understand that there is quite a difference. The digital, it's not a neutral platform. The digital is also a place through which point of views are actually expressed. In a way, it's a debate that in art history we know and we have been seen in different occasions. For example, think about the heydays of photography. It took actually a long time for people to understand that even a photograph, it's actually has a point of view. It's not an objective document. And each time we take a photograph, we already somehow propose a stance to the world. And through the work of contemporary artists, we actually very well understand that also the world of the digital actually function in exactly the same way, meaning that in any case, there is always somebody behind the camera. There is always somebody that decides which kind of perspective somehow we should take. So please move on to the next slide. Um, on the occasion of the conference, for example, we had a number of thinkers and artists. For example, we have here Cecil B. Evans and our director, Karen Christoph Bakarjev. And you can move on to the next slide, for example. This is the book that we produced, and this is the location in which the conference was held. And you can also move on to the next slides. Up, I would say, to slide number 1920, because here I'm just showing you some images, for example, of one of the ways contemporary art museums are using in order to tour exhibition. We are actually looking here at a book by Marzia Migliora that is basically traveling as a digital content throughout Europe in these days. But what I would love to go to now is the next slide. And in order to sum up a few final conclusions, just address the thinking, the critical thinking of some contemporary artists. Please move on to the further slides and more. And please move on to the next slide as well. And this is still Marzia Migliora, and then the next slide. Exactly. And Cecil B. Evans has been one of the artists that were invited on the occasion of the conference we held in 2017. And she's a contemporary artist that has been working with the digital for a long time. And Cecil B. Evans is really one of those people who, of course, believes that it's very important to remember that the digital is not an alternative reality. It's actually a full reality that somehow replicates the same problems that we experience in the real world, and if possible, of course, has additional other critical issues. And let's move on to the next slide, please. And please start the link with the sound in the mute condition, so I can keep on talking over and we do not use precious minutes to the other speakers. And the artworks by Cecil B. are actually immersive situations in which you can walk in as a visitor. So, of course, they require for the presence of the visitor inside. And her work, like, for example, in this one, you do follow, ideally, at least you would like possibly to follow a story, while instead it's actually not possible. And this means that the artist is using what we call usually hyperlinked narratives, meaning that she is replicating the experience that we usually have when we are surfing the net, in which from one window we actually immediately want to jump to the next, and somehow we start thinking about doing a research, and then we end up with a zillion of other information, and the entire situation might all of a sudden become very confused. So let's say that the traditional idea of a linear narrative is not at work and is not possible anymore in the contemporary world. And this is what Cecil B. Evans' artworks often address. But I see that the link is not working, so maybe we could move on to the next slide. And I guess what the screening, okay, this is fine. This what was on the screen was actually fine. It's the work of another artist that I would love to address very, very briefly. It's Ed Atkins. It's a British artist. And Ed has been working also with the digital for a long time, using computer-generated images, and basically literally buying on the net avatars that he uses in order to then mix their own features with his own, adding his own voice, adding personal expressions, and often showing us in a way the other face of the digital. His images, I don't know if we can go back to that short link that was playing before. What's interesting in his work, and it's a link that can be found in the following slide, in the next slide, and the following one as well. Please continue turning the slides. And the next one, please. Okay, here you have a YouTube link if you want to launch it. What his work exposes, it's actually a sort of rotten face of the digital. His models often start looking at us and they appear somehow very beautiful and perfect, but the more actually we look at them and the more we face the obsolescence and the passing of time that, of course, we know by experience is often hitting technology even quicker than the humans. So I guess what it's the strong message that we are getting from a number of contemporary artists at work today with the digital is that, of course, together with the amazingness and together with the wonder of new possibilities that technical tools are offering. And I loved very much the fact that Andreas Bauer mentioned the fact that people like Leonardo and Raffaello were the scientists of their time, and it's absolutely true. I mean, even within more recent years, I mean, the entire idea of immersive art actually somehow comes from an Italian artist that is Lucio Fontana, that is really the first one that since 1950s imagined an artwork as a physical experience, as a place through which actually people can walk through. But at the same time, artists always have the ability to be very critical and to keep on helping us to think that what we have in our hands are tools. And as I said, these tools can work as tools, but they can also be considered as a critical content. I think that since the YouTube connection is moving and is playing, you see, yes, some of the characters of Ed Atkins. And I would just like to end up with slide number 30, if possible, in order to close up my little speech. And what we are working today, actually, we are installing in the museum as I speak. If we could move on to slide number 30, we are working with German artist Anne Himhoff in these days. And Anne Himhoff is an amazing artist working from Germany. She's the winner of the Golden Lion. She was the winner of the Golden Lion at the Venice Biennial in 2017. And she's definitely one of those artists who are referring to technology and to the pervasiveness of the use of digital tools in daily life. But at the same time, she's actually working with people. She's working with performers, and these performers are, throughout her performances, are actually exchanging messages via their smartphones. And they are putting on stage in front of audiences a number of gestures, a number of movements, even a number of facial expressions that are definitely the kind of body language that we are learning somehow also from the net and from the massive use of the selfies and a number of other similar kind of situations. So I guess, with the work of Anne Himov and the many, many very deep issues that she raises for today's, I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Beccaria. I apologize for the inconvenience we had with the synchronizing the presentations and your speech. And now we move to the presentations from Hanoi. And the first one is going to be by Trang Hon Han. Trang Hon Han is an anthropologist. She got her PhD at the Free University in Berlin. Then she worked as an anthropologist for several years, and recently she got the position of vice director of the Vietnam Museum of Ethnology, and she's addressing mainly the problems of the ethnic minorities in Southeast Asia. I give you the floor.
Kính chào các quý vị đại biểu.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Actually, having listened to all the three presentations from the international experts, I can see very clearly that we have been outdated. It means that you are behind the, innovations and the trends internationally. So from my presentation, I'm sorry that you won't see that in Vietnam we are only taking the very first steps towards the digital transformation, because from the other three presentations before, you could see that internationally they have already developed a lot of the digital technologies in order to deliver the knowledge and the arts, the beauty of the arts to the public, even during the COVID-19 pandemic lockdown. So there are many different reasons in Vietnam that has, made a lot of the bottleneck to our digital transformation. So let me start my presentation anyway. This is the front of the Museum of Ethnology of Vietnam, and we were established in 1995. The museum was established in 1995, but it took us about 2 years in order to make all of the preparations before we could really open the museum in 1997. And until 2019, we would have received around 500,000 of visitors a year from around 100 countries all over the country, and we have many different things that we display in the museum. For example, a lot of the different types of the exhibits and CD-ROMs, VCDs, and photographs. And so totally we have around 30,000 exhibits and around 90,000 photographs. Then many different kinds of the CD-ROMs and audio disc or VCD and so on, DVD as well. But a lot of information from those materials have not been used and have not been delivered to the visitors. And here you can see this is the function and the responsibility of our museum. And so we are under the Ministry of Culture and Sports and Tourism, and so we are assigned the specific responsibility. And the first important task or duty, that is to do the research, and also to study about the potential applications of the technology, and we also are responsible for disseminating and educating the public about the historical and cultural values of the ethnic groups in Vietnam. And another task, another duty, that is to provide the scientific evidences and also scientific arguments on the ethnic groups. And because we are responsible for educating people, so we need to be very prudent before we really have an exhibition, or before we really communicate or deliver any piece of information or knowledge to the public. And I remember from the second presentation, if I remember exactly, then the presenter talked about the bottom-up approach. So that's also the approach that we have been applying in our museum. And as I said before, we are expected to be an advisory institution to many ministries in the country, in Vietnam, when they have to make policies about the ethnic minorities groups in Vietnam. So that is to say, this is a kind of the political task. And we've been also working with the international partners in order to introduce to them about our ethnicities, and also to contribute to the bilateral relationship between our governments and our nation with the other nations in the world. And we are also responsible for training and developing the human resources for the anthropology and for the other museums in the country. And if you know about the museums in Vietnam, that then in early 90s and early 2000, we did receive a lot of assistance from France. And so I can say that we could have at least three languages, English and French and Vietnamese, in our exhibitions and in our display areas. But I'm sorry to say that French seems to be a more dominating foreign language than English. And then I could say that our activities and program have had the spillover effect on many other museums in the country, because as I said before, we are also responsible for training and developing the human resources for the museum sector. So we send our officers and our experts to the other museums in the other cities or towns or provinces. And so we've been quite successful in the transfer of knowledge. And this is our layout, around 4.7 hectares of land. And we have the three main sections. The white section, as you can see, half of a circle on the left side. That is the display area about the 54 ethnic groups in Vietnam. And among those 54 ethnic groups, actually we have a majority group, which is the King people, and the other 53 are really the ethnic minorities. And then the other section, that is also a very interesting part, just next to the white section, the white color section, where you can see the models of houses from the mountainous area, I mean from the ethnic minority groups in the mountainous area. So we can see that 11 different houses with different design and architectural features. So then you can see the ownership of those model houses, because we have even invited the representative of those ethnic minority groups to come and to supervise the process of constructing those houses. And we have been always respecting the culture of the ethnic minority, and for the operations and maintenance of those houses, we have been using the inputs and also feedbacks from the ethnic minority groups. And the other section, that is the last part on the map. That is where we organize the other events, festival activities, and yes, we can also organize the festival activities of a certain ethnic minority group in front of their own house. I mean the house in our display area. And especially children, they like very much those kind of festival activities, especially when that is the festival event of some ethnic minority group. And for the international visitors, however, we have recognized that they seem to have a very different perception and a different way of reactions when they visit our museum. It's very much different from the way our Vietnamese visitors would react. So we try to organize the displays and exhibitions in a relevant manner so that we can attract both Vietnamese and foreign visitors. And that is the last section again. That is right next to the entrance of the museum, and it is the Southeast Asia building, because that is the area where we display the exhibits from the other Southeast Asian countries. But then after a time, we received many requests from the other countries, not only from Southeast Asia, that they would want us to display their own exhibits as well. So now the section has become a more international building, so not only limited to the Southeast Asian cultural exhibits. And now, if we talk about digital transformation or applications of technology, and so far we have been applying the digital technologies in all of the four main sectors or four main areas of activities in our museum. These include display or exhibition, both the traveling exhibition as well, and the second area of activity that we have been applying the digital technology, that is inventory and preservation, and then communications and also education. So we have already developed many video clips in order to support the displays or exhibitions, and with the aim of giving more details about the exhibits, and also to deliver the unphysical features of the exhibit. So before we used the analog technology, but more recently, since early 2000, we have already converted it from analog to the digital format, and we have already started some experiments, very initial experiments with the 3D technology in order to produce the CD-ROMs for Vietnamese cultural exhibitions. So we have the plan that the experiments will be accomplished in a very short time to come, and then we can really have it in our future exhibition. So this is again the picture to show the process of the conversion from analog to digital format. And for the first picture, you can see Xin Chào, that is hello in English. In this digital format, you can listen to people saying hello in 54 languages of the 54 ethnic groups in Vietnam. And sorry, still that slide. Okay. And on the right side, you see the picture on the process of making the conic heads and Chuang village, that is the village where they have the traditional occupation of making the conic heads. But before, with the analog format, you would only see, only one stage or one step of that production process. But now with the digital format, you can see the full picture or even a full video clip about the whole production process. And then again on the left side now on this news screen, and that is the display area about the Southeast Asian countries. And since the 2010, when we built up the display area for the Southeast Asia culture, we have already applied the digital technology there. And this is the picture about our experiments with the 3D technology, and it's about the Catholics. And so due to the time limit, then I couldn't have a longer introduction about these experiments. But just for your information, we have developed many images, and with all the three languages, the Vietnamese, the French, and English, and some other pictures about that experiment to show you. This is the screenshot from the experiment, and we can see that it's really very good in quality. However, we still need time before we can have a really good quality control, and before those kind of the 3D images can be uploaded on the website and to be accessible to the public. And we can even put those information and pictures into the CD-ROM that can be distributed to the members of the public. So again, we'll need more time in order to really accomplish this experiment. And we are very lucky to be the very first museum in Vietnam to join a program called the Asia-Europe Virtual Exhibition. This is again the screenshot from the website on the internet. I'm sorry, the link is not clearly seen here, but if you could see the picture on the bottom on the left side, that is our Museum of Ethnology, and we have contributed the images and pictures of the most beautiful exhibits from our museum to join this Asia-Europe virtual exhibition that was started in 2016. And then the experts under the program also shared those images to the other three museums in Vietnam, including the National Museum of Vietnam and the Women's Museum in 2017. However, this program has not been, expanded after that. And I think it depends on the strategic orientations of different museums and in the way that they want to develop their museums. And then I think that the most remarkable achievement of our museum so far, that is our database program to manage the exhibits and photographs. We have received assistance from the external partners, and since 2006. And then in 2010, we could have the database developed, and still now we are continuing to improve the database. And we have had around 50,000 exhibits and photographs, the information of which has been put into the database, and we are continuing to expand it. And so it's very helpful because with the information from the database, our employees may search on the laptop, on the computer, the information of any exhibit or any photograph, and they do not need to go to the warehouse and to seek for that exhibit physically. So again, the database is very helpful, and we are continuing to expand it, and we hope to receive more assistance and also advices from the external partners so that we can further improve the database and its effectiveness. Because since 2006 or 2010 until now, there have been many changes in the IT technology, and also at that time, we were, subject to the database administration company, which is, kind of the single source supplier, service supplier. So sometimes we were very much dependent on them to resolve any problem, and then especially for the CD or VCD or DVDs. And the audio disc, for example, then they are very much meaningful because especially for the Museum of Ethnology, those kind of tools and instruments can help a lot to deliver the message to the visitors. We are quite different from the other arts museum where they can have the sculptures or paintings to show the visitors, and the digital technology has been also applied more strongly in the recent time due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And now we do not only operate our website and email, but also we have had a Facebook account and YouTube, and we have had the short video clips on YouTube. And because we cannot wait for the visitors to come back to the museum, so we have used the documentary films which have been stored and kept in our database. Now we have shared those documentary films with the public. Before, we never shared those documentary films with the public, but now, because the mindset has been changed due to the context, due to the COVID-19 context, and we want to attract more visitors' attention. So I think that we've been quite successful in raising again the demand from the potential visitors with the technology applications, especially the digital technology in the communication campaigns. And I'm sorry to say that the three presentations before were so excellent because they could apply so many different technology to communicate and educate the public. But for us, we cannot do so because we are not easy to find out the funding sources to do those kind of activities. Now our managing institution, that is the academic the science academy, they only finance a very small part for our expenditures, and we need to be self-accounting. We need to make revenues on our own, and so we need to be more, financially smart. And so again, we really hope to have the partnership program with the international partners, and so that we can know how to mobilize our internal sources more effectively. And we also want to partner with the technology companies. And I think that the way the international museums are doing cannot be replicated in Vietnam. And the state budget for Vietnam, the state budget here in Vietnam, it's only 1/5 of the total expenditures of a provincial level museum. And for us, we are much bigger than a provincial level museum. So we cannot, just rely on the state budget allocation. And there were the times that we have to downsize our staff. And the other new application in our museum, that is the LED screen that we have been using for communication and for the education campaigns. And now we are working on the procedure in order to use the LED screen in more public spaces. Because in Vietnam it would require quite many procedures that we have to ask for permissions from the regulatory agencies. And however, we have already received some offers from the potential, partners, saying that we may use that LED screen in the very big public spaces, for example, in the airport terminals. And using of the digital technologies for education, the first, application in the recent time, that is the audio guide. So we have collaborated with a company, a private company, VietSoft Pro, in order to develop the audio guide system for our display area. So far, we have had 12 different languages for this audio guide system. And before the COVID-19 pandemic, the service was used by quite many visitors. And the audio guide, however, is only a tool. And I think that is not enough, and we will need to do more research and study on the virtual reality, 3D VR, that we want to use it for the program to explore the cultural features of the ethnic minority groups in Vietnam. And about 1 year ago, we had a discussion with Mr. Michael Croft and Ms. Huang, I think. And we talked about the UNESCO program of Creative City, and with some potential for the museum like us to join in the activities or programs of that network. And we have also in the plan another program we call the interactive program for children. And so we think that we need to be again more prudent when we select the technologies and the content to be delivered to the children. And because we want on the one hand to maintain the tradition, but on the other hand we don't want to be very conservative. So our expectation is that we can make the full use of the traditions and also the full use of the technologies in order to become more interactive with the visitors and especially with the young generation. So again, we are very much delighted to learn from you. So our advantage of our museum, that is we can work with the communities, and we have a lot of opportunities to provide our services to the communities. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is about our educational activities and target the group, that is the young generation, the children. And here we apply the interactive screens, or the touch screens. Then the children can go to this discovery room, and they can use the touch screens in order to learn different stories, and also the educational games and so on. But the touch screens are only the very first step. We think that in order to educate the children better, we should also invest in many other means of technology or in other facilities. And the other picture that you see on the bottom of the screen, that is our multimedia room. where the visitors may use different kinds of equipment for listening. And again, this is the multimedia room, many sound equipment and karaoke box, and also the search engine. Next slide. But still again, we are facing many challenges, and the first challenge is that the technology is evolving very quickly, and it can become obsolete after a very short time. So we also need to adapt quickly to that development of the technology. And the Museum of Ethnology is quite specific, and we need to have a more sustainable program for operating our museum, whereas we still have quite limited resources in terms of infrastructure, in terms of the financial capacity, and also in terms of human resources. Especially our staff are not really, good in technology, but if we outsource the technological experts from outside, then they do not really understand about the culture or arts. And so a challenge is how to collaborate them into one team, into one working team. And of course, we would want to have more cooperation programs with the international partners. And we think that we also need to learn from the peer museums in the country. Although before we might have trained them, but now we need to come back to them to learn, because they might have been very successful in some certain activity that can be useful for us. And we would like to also have more opportunities to exchange our exhibit and to join the international exhibitions. So if we hadn't been impacted by COVID-19, then I'm sure that we would have had some opportunities to enjoy those international exhibitions. So that's all from my part, and thank you very much, the organizers, for inviting us to this workshop and for presenting the information about the Museum of Ethnology of Vietnam. Thank you.
Thank you, Han, for the overview that you have provided about the Ethnology Museum, and I think that this forum has been organized specifically to promote the exchange and to favor the contacts between the different parties from Europe, from Vietnam, in order to promote the development of the museum system, as Andreas was saying, not in one area, but globally, and putting in the center the society of the humans, which is extremely relevant. Okay, we move on to the next technical presentation. We are a little bit late on the schedule, so I would like to ask to keep on time, please. And Mr. V is the head of the Exhibition and Communication Department of the Hanoi Museum, which is the museum that is hosting the Magister Raffaello. So I have to thank Mr. He for hosting the exhibition.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So first, I would like to thank the Italian embassies and the organizers for having been invited, the representative of Hanoi Museum, to join this event, and also to have some presentations to share with you. And I understand that I have limited time, and I will be very brief in my presentation. We should say that the digital technology have already been very common, and if the arts and culture sectors fail to apply the digital technology, we will fail. Yeah, we'll be the failure. Yeah, and in my presentation, I will share with you how we use the digital technology in Vietnam. According to the statistic of 2019, in Vietnam, there are 150 museums, of which 126 are public and 44 of them are non-public. And we possess more than 3 million documents and exhibits. And in Hanoi Museum, there are in Hanoi, there are 40 museums of different kinds. And Vietnam have already developed the master plan for the development of museum for the period from 2005 to 2020. So, and we very soon will have in place a new master plan, and our ministries, the culture ministries, also are going through the consultation process for the new master plan. Yeah, I would like to refer to the Master Plan 2005-2020. We said that it is necessary to have the innovation of the museum system, also to develop the museum to the cultural historical center to contribute to the development of the countries. So this has already been very clearly mentioned in the Master Plan. And most recently, the ministries already approved the projects for the innovation of the museum, for the improvement of the quality of the museum, and also with the very good linkages with the tourism promotion. We look at some of the key products that can be applied with the 4.0 technology, and we try to provide the bilingual or multilingual products, and also try to incorporate the educational products and exhibits to attract the public. And when we look at the exhibition of the museum where we use technology, the most recently in Hanoi Museum, we have the multimedia. It's a kind of the multimedia exhibition of Bùi Xuân Phái. You may know the artist Bùi Xuân Phái is very famous for Hanoi street painting. We use the projections to introduce his masterpieces, and in Hanoi Museum we have a master the Magister Raffaello, and where you can see with a lot of the technologies input. So we would like to kindly ask you to come to join the Magister Raffaello before the closing date of this on October the 31st. Yeah, and we also in Hanoi Museum, we also have the different events where in the collaboration with our partners from Taiwan, so where we use the 3D technologies, we have the sound effect and also the lightning effect technologies to try to introduce the very diverse cultural values of Vietnam and Taiwan. And yeah, so and also another exhibition. It is the Magister Raffaello you have been talking about. This is there at the Hanoi Museum at the moment. Yeah, once again, I would like to kindly ask you to come and to join the Raffaello very famous masterpieces. And in Hanoi Museum, we have a lot of the innovation. You know that our museum was established in 1982. However, in 2010, I mean when we celebrated the 1,000 years of Hanoi, we moved to the new location of Hanoi Museum, which is next to the National Conference Center. And by the end of 2021, we will have the new establishment next to the museum. And the local experts and French experts also have advised Hanoi Museum in terms of how we can use the technologies for the better exhibition. For example, we use the hologram, or we use the 3D projection technologies, or also to use the VR or the AR for the better exhibition, for example. And we also have have been working with our partners to have the kind of the automatic narratives to the exhibits at the museum. You know that in my presentation, I very much would like to talk about the opportunities and the challenges for the technology application for the exhibition in Hanoi Museum. And I will talk about the opportunities that we have. For example, the first opportunities. You know that the technology exhibition have been very much welcomed by the public, especially the youngsters, because the youngsters, they very much want to experience the new technologies. And if it's the first time you use the technology with the exhibition, it is really very attractive to them. And we can also use the technologies to try to connect different cultures and also to allow the cultural exchange. And we can also use the multimedia. The multimedia functionalities can be very much helpful for the visitors. Yeah, they can visit the museum and to learn something that they're interested in. For example, they learn the cultural values of the countries, and they may learn about the certain works or the certain artists, for example. And they you know that the public, they can use the smartphone and with the different apps, and they go to the links and they can see what they wish, for example. And when we have some ideas for having the multimedia exhibition for Bùi Xuân Phái artworks, this is really interesting one. But you know that in order to have this exhibition, we have to work hard during the preparation period. For example, the collection, the appraisal of those works, and then we make the codings for that and digitalize this, and also try to combine with the sound and also the light effects. And we need to have the very professional and very skillful human resources for this. However, this is not the biggest challenges. Human resources is not the biggest challenges for us. The biggest challenges for us is the funding. I agree with Hồng Hạnh when she mentioned the financial funding difficulties. And for Bùi Xuân Phái exhibition, the fundings needed for technologies were up to millions of US dollars. For example, we have to get the license for the software, and also we need to have the fundings for other things. You know that the state budget can never be enough for that, especially when the Bùi Xuân Phái artwork exhibition is free of charge. That means we open this freely to the public. The public can go, can come and can enjoy the works there, the artworks at the museum. We have to spend a lot, we have to spend millions of US dollars, and we cannot get this from the state budget. Another challenge for us is that it is the human resources. But we need the human resources for managing the museum and for doing the different works in the museum, and the one who will hand on the technology piece of things, for example. And the last but not least, it is really a very big challenge for us. You know that in Vietnam, you know that the technologies that we can use in Vietnam Museum, this is the imported one. So how can we access those technologies, and how can we be smart enough to select the most suitable technologies for us? And sometimes we also need to learn from other partners, but sending the staff for the study tours abroad is really costly. And really, really costly, and it's almost impossible under the pandemic context, you can imagine. And so we can go to internet, you can get some information about that, and you know there are some technologies available, and we can come up with a selection. Yeah, because it's a time constraint, so I would like to skip some slides in my presentations. And may I stop here? Thank you very much for your attention. I would like to wish you very good health. Thank you.
Mr. Wee, for providing us an overview of the issues that we are facing in the Hanoi Museum in order to improve the technology and to move towards the digital era. And again, I think that I hope that this meeting is going to facilitate the contacts and to facilitate the implementation of new technologies in the Vietnam museums. Now I would like to invite Michael Croft to make the final contribution to the meeting and to summarize in some way the conclusions of the meeting. Thank you.
Grazie, thank you. Antonio, the ambassador of Italy to Vietnam, my friend, distinguished guests, experts, ladies and gentlemen, friends of culture. A rich discussion today that touches all my UNESCO pressure points. Not just culture, but education and science and media and communication. So my synapses, if I can put it this way, my apologies to the translators for throwing out the word synapses like that, but my synapses are firing on all fronts. We see in the presentations from the experts the incredible new reality, sometimes virtual, of what is possible now for museums. I don't want to say that anything is possible, but actually that was almost the feeling that I had, that anything was possible in terms of some of the uses of technologies and what we've seen that's being done right now. Some of it's actually just hard to imagine. We also hear from our friends here about the realities also as well, the difficulties and the transition that's needed. And so what I would like to do, because of course it's a little bit difficult to sum up all that rich discussion, is try to situate our discussion today and those presentations within the new reality of Hanoi, which is that of a creative city. And this is something which offers a new opportunity to the museums in Hanoi, and also to an extent in Vietnam, to maybe overcome some of the challenges which we've heard about, and to realize some of the opportunities which we see, and to create some Vietnamese magic, if I can put it that way. So I was very happy to be invited here today to listen and to learn from this impressive group of speakers who've addressed a subject that is at once urgent and dear, close to our hearts, which is namely the potential that exists for museums in the digital world. Statistics from UNESCO make clear, only too clear actually, the enormous impact that COVID-19 is having on the global community of museums. Of the roughly 95,000 museums currently listed in the globe, in 2020, 90% have closed their doors during the crisis. And we expect 10% of that number will never reopen. In face of the crisis, some museums, as we have seen, have acted quickly to develop their presence on the internet, but we have to remember that this actually represents only a handful of institutions, because the digital divide is more evident than ever. Only 5% of museums in Africa or small island developing states, for instance, were able to post online content. As it has in so many other aspects of our lives, COVID-19 has thrown open the curtain on existing inequalities and inconsistencies in our world. Now, of course, many museums in Vietnam and elsewhere were going through a little bit of an identity crisis before the pandemic. How to adapt, how to repurpose themselves for a new digital era. So forgive me for repeating what we so often hear these days, that in crisis there is an opportunity. Today's seminar is really a welcome chance to examine the opportunities that new technologies allow for museums to innovate and to rediscover the relevance to become, as we are so fond of saying in our own UN reform these days, fit for purpose. Like the United Nations itself, digital technologies provide the possibility to reconnect with youth. I say this because our marching orders from New York and Paris now are to orient all our programs towards the next generation. Not simply to dialogue, but to learn and to benefit from their passion, their energy, and their creativity. And if we take the context of Vietnam and Hanoi specifically, we have other reasons to be optimistic. As I have said, many of you will know that Hanoi has joined the UNESCO Creative City UNESCO Creative City Network last year under the design criteria. And in its application, the city noted that while its status as a creative city of design might be somewhat aspirational, its rich cultural heritage nonetheless represents a legacy of creativity and innovation, which is fertile soil for a new cultural renaissance to be led by its most talented and energetic citizens, the young people of Hanoi. While the Creative City designation would be a treasured addition to its status as a UNESCO City of Peace, its real value would be a tool to help Hanoi develop as a creative capital, to empower its citizens, and to build a more balanced, diverse, innovative, and inclusive economy. In short, to move towards a more sustainable and people-centered approach to development. And we heard today the importance in all of this that humans, that people, that us, are at the center of art and science and society. In joining the Creative Cities Network, Hanoi will expand its cooperation and exchange with other cities of design in the region like Seoul and Singapore, and Kobe and Shanghai, and also globally with cities like Helsinki, Montreal, Berlin, and Torino. However, for all the potential that these new relationships represent, the city's application also stressed the importance of partnership on the ground, collaboration between citizens, government, universities, the private sector, and international friends to support the realization of Hanoi's own development vision and strategy, with the Creative City designation acting to both stimulate new initiatives and acting to link them together to foster a more coherent and focused approach. So this seminar today has been a good example of this multi-stakeholder approach. What is more, the discussion on best museum practice in the digital era is also situated at the heart of one of the three work streams of the Hanoi Creative City Action Plan, namely cultural dynamics. Together with creative education and urban regeneration, the re-examination of the city's cultural ecosystem will be an area of focus and effort moving forward. As museums play a critical role in that space, today's discussion really couldn't be more timely, and it couldn't be more relevant. Because there's an eagerness among government and also stakeholders to move quickly. And by shedding light on the possibilities for innovation that exist, the museums of Hanoi will be better placed to engage when the city's cultural dynamics are re-examined and reinforced to support the evolution of the creative city and also set a new direction for other museums in the country. So I want to thank everyone today, thank the Embassy for the invitation, and the experts for very stimulating presentations in what I think has been an empowering discussion today. Molto grazie. Thank you very much, Sinkaman.
Thank you, Michael Croft. I think that you have summarized it perfectly, that and you have made a perspective for us, for all of us, to move forward and to implement the new technologies in the light of improving the quality of life and focusing on the needs of the young generation and of the needs of the young people, which is really motivated in promoting an evolution of our society. And I think that your words are absolutely perfectly fitting to the last part of this event. And we are a little bit late on the schedule, but if there are a couple of questions, I would love to take some time for the questions if there are questions, before moving to the refreshment that have been organized by the embassy. Is there any question? Please, can you come? Take the microphone, yeah. Hmm? Yes, it's coming.
Tôi xin phép có câu hỏi.
Thank you very much. And may I have a question to the experts, the international experts? Could you please give us an advice? Let's say an advice about a kind of, let's say, some tips for our museums, how to organize a meaningful event for the public in the context that we have very limited resources. Especially in Vietnam, you know, we don't have many resources, financial and human as well, and we are still depend a lot on the state budget allocation. We cannot have yet the accessibility to the market capital resources. So we have the feeling that we don't have an ecosystem which is relevant for us, which is advanced enough in order to, you know, create the experiences that you have mentioned in your presentation, like the immersive display experiences and so on. So again, with your experience, how could we organize the meaningful events for the public in such a context?
Question, and we get another question.
Thank you. My question is a bit of a reflection to the first question, but I would like to address directly to Jelena. I would like to know a bit more on, financially, how the Magister Raffaello work was formulated. Was it initiated by a group of talented people who are not the staff of the museum, or that was originated from the museum? And then you can you find the resources and you contract the talents from technology background and some others. Just a curiosity. So financially, so that enable how we can visualize and relate to the work of the museum in Vietnam. How can we learn from that process to initiate something similar? Well, given the very difficult situation of resources mobilization is the first question raised. Thank you.
Okay, thank you also for your question. I think that the two questions are very strictly related to each other, and I would like to invite Elena or Andreas that have been creating the Magister Raffaello to answer to those questions, please.
Yes, thank you for the question. Actually, there are different ways in which we develop our projects. Most of all, there is the initial idea that we develop internally, and then that it joins the interest of a broader external institution. In this case, since we have internally a team composed by of different expertise, so we have art historians and we have set designers, we have architects, and all the members of this way of thinking that allows us to elaborate an experience in 360 degrees. So what we do is develop internally a project and an idea. In this case, it was very a happy conjunction of the context, because Raffaello idea of an exhibition that we have elaborated with a scientific committee and curator. You have had the possibility to listen in the last week's seminar. It's Professor Strinati. Together with a huge international committee, has elaborated together with us the idea, and it was actually implemented and used as a promotion for the ministry, Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of the promotion of the Year of Raffaello. So in this anniversary. So there are two different models upon which we work. So one is together with institutions, and another one is when we internally develop a project and invest personally in the development by itself. We are a private company, so our business model allows us to be as flexible as possible in terms of the environment where we operate. So we don't like to define ourselves as service providers, but rather as partners, because we do really think all over about the project. So since the beginning to the end, and in this way, I try to answer also the first question, because this kind of approach help us understand an overall context, because every museum is a contemporary museum, no matter what the collection is. And because it's an active place of learning, and it must include all different phases of its life. So it's not only during, but also before and after visiting an exhibition. So what is provided and produced is an overall experience based on sharing stories. So in terms of technology, this is also somehow a core on how the technology should be used overall in order to share the stories that make grow the sense of belonging to a certain institution, to a museum. And it implies also a territorial connection. When we talk about cities and urban landscapes and places, there is a lot of things to do in order to create a cohesion in a territorial inclusion. And museums have an active role in this. And it can do it by sharing stories to all the citizens actively, and to use technologies for this purpose. So use technologies for new solutions of communicating and creating links. So I don't know if I answered properly to the curiosities and the questions that there is. Probably Andreas, you can add something more on that.
Yeah, thank you. I would also like to answer particularly much more on the first question, because I understand that it might look a little bit of kind of frustrating to see possibilities and then find your own limitations. But I would really encourage you, and this is also how Ars Electronica started. I mean, I told a little bit, this is more than 40 years of history. We didn't start it with this thing. It was a gradual development. And it was also here, in that case here, it was the city of Linz. It was we are still owned and funded by the city of Linz. So it was over 40 years, a gradual investment into this development. But coming back to yours, I would really encourage you to use your own power. You have to find also your own identity in the digital environment. You have to find your style. Lots of people are curious and interested, how did something like Ars Electronica develop in Linz? And it has its purpose. Why not New York or I don't know, some other big cities? Why this little small town? And it was, in the end, it was the circumstances. It had economic reasons. It had clever people being here at the same time, thinking about the future. And that's why I encourage you to think what can be for Hanoi, what can it be for Vietnam, where is your special style that you use. Money is not a limitation. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities, in particular digital media very often comes with a rather small price tag very often that you can use. And as Hanoi is member now in this big family of UNESCO cities of creativity, that means that there is creativity. That means that there are humans, that there are people, that there are young people who have this expertise in design, in creativity, and all those kind of things. So, and also use this as a network, use this as an entrance point. You are already one step ahead of many other cities that are not part of this network. Yeah? So that means you can actively participate in these environments and use these kind of things. And there are a couple of other examples, particularly in the UNESCO city network. If you look at Gwangju in Korea, for example, also city of media arts with a quite similar background, and where they kind of develop, use it as a vision. But definitely, you have to find your own approach, your style, because this is the only way that it will work within your community.
Okay, thank you for your reply. And I would like to invite the ambassador of Italy, Antonio Alessandro, to conclude the conference, please.
Yes, thank you very much. Very briefly, just to thank all the speakers from Europe and from Hanoi for their very interesting presentations and inputs. And I would also like to thank the public for their attention and their interest over this long afternoon. A long afternoon, but a very good one, in my opinion. I think that our objective was to provide a platform for exchanges, and I think we have achieved this objective. And the topic we have discovered, I think, altogether, this topic, how to adapt to an ever-changing world, is extremely relevant. And there are many things going on in Europe and in Vietnam, and I think there is a huge potential for cooperation. So I would like to conclude, picking up from some suggestions also, I would like to conclude by wishing and hoping that also through these contacts and these exchanges, we can multiply direct relations and exchanges between museums in Europe, in Italy in particular, and museums in Vietnam. Again, there is a lot of potential, and if it is true that for some reasons European museums are more advanced, but it is also true that the numbers in Vietnam, the numbers of visitors to museums in Vietnam are very relevant and probably much more advanced than in Europe. 500,000 people visiting the ethnology museums. I think that not as many we would have in our museums in Europe. So there is a lot of complementarity, I guess, between the two continents, and I would like to conclude on this. Thank you, Michael, for being with us today and for also bringing your perspective on all this. So I'll close here. Again, thank you very much, and please also enjoy some refreshments that we have prepared to conclude our afternoon. Thank you again.